It was that time of the year. Red packets were filled to the brim with $100 bills. Bright fireworks with Mandarin characters fired up the sky with the booms and sparks that followed. Flavors coat and decorate my taste buds as I skim over the bright lanterns filled with dreams for the new year that awaits us. Laughter engulfs the household as we spoke in thick, comfortable accents. I swear, hours flew by until the brink of dawn. Yet, what about now? It was February 2023. The sounds of what we thought were fireworks were the gunshots from the Monterey Park shooting. There was no boisterous laughter echoing across the halls. The hours that my grandpa spent preparing exorbitant amounts of traditional dishes were now spent wishing 新年快乐 over the internet. Everyone is coughing. It was as though this holiday didn't even exist. And that's when I asked myself, what in the world happened? I discussed this feeling with my Chinese friends, and we've all agreed that for the past few years, we've felt immensely disconnected from our culture. And what a coincidence. It was that same exact time period that the infamous COVID-19 pandemic began, accompanied by the rise of Asian hate. With the failed control of the pandemic, has led to almost 7 million deaths up to date. What we need is multilateral cooperation in order to manage these future global health threats, not pitting nations against each other in a spiralation towards discrimination. In fact, 63% of Asian Americans have said to have felt disconnected from their culture since COVID began. I found this so frustrating on how this feeling was so universal for my community. As an only child of first-generation Chinese-born immigrants who have sacrificed their lives to provide me with the American dream, I wanted anything but for us to feel stripped from our culture. At a mere age of 3 years old, I was constantly begging my grandpa to teach me new Mandarin characters. I packed my bag and badminton racket every Sunday morning to head to Chinese school. Heck, I even lived in China for 3 months, indulging in the savory yet sweet street foods that scent lingered for blocks away. My curiosity and pride for my bloodline flowed like an endless river, and I had never given it a second thought. But that's changed. While my peers focused on having to take classes over Zoom, I've continuously been plagued with news articles and backhanded apologies about the new brutal Asian American attack. This is Yuan Yuanzu, a 26-year-old woman who was on her way to the gym like usual. She was verbally harassed and spat on by a middle-aged man. And something that really stood out to me was something she mentioned after the attack. She said about her attacker, "He didn't look strange or angry or anything, you know. He looked like a normal person." This is Bobby Tong with his family. They were out shopping when Bobby was attacked and slashed with a knife. His attacker thought they were Chinese and therefore responsible for the pandemic. When his attacker was finally on the ground, he yelled at them, "Get out of America!" In his plea, he had admitted that he had attempted to kill them. Stop AAPA Hate, a national coalition that gathers data on these racially motivated attacks related to the pandemic, amassed 9,081 incident reports from March 2020 to June 2021. How has our world turned out like this? How can me and my community not live in fear to do something that we are experiencing right alongside you? I was a 13-year-old girl when these injustices were first brought to my attention. I could have been worried about completing my homework or finishing that last piece of broccoli on my dinner plate, and instead, I was petrified about simply going out grocery shopping with my mom for the fear of us losing our lives. And the most agonizing part of it all, nobody seemed to care. Nobody spoke up about this monstrous behavior. I myself felt guilty for not being able to advocate for my people's suffering. I felt that I would only be silenced and that I would face punishment as well. But I was wrong. The only way to combat hate is to address it. All of us can work on eliminating Asian hate. Now, it must be hard to understand why such violent acts like the couple I mentioned before even occur in the first place. But these are just a couple of the thousands that happened in that year alone. I believe that one of the biggest factors that leads up to this is the media. You see, the media has transformed our lives in the way that it's involved itself into our day-to-day activities. We turn towards the media as the easiest source of information and therefore rely on it quite heavily. Now, let's take a look at what the media has to say about COVID. First, one of the most common questions when a new disease outbreak emerges: where did it originate from? Who had the first case? Because although the exact origins of COVID are still unknown, the fact that many initial cases arise in Wuhan, China, resulted in public figures and media to result and associate this virus with people of Chinese descent. News outlets such as Fox News and even CNN have commonly used terms such as Chinese coronavirus or Wuhan virus. Former US President Donald Trump has also used similar language and justified his remarks by saying that it's not racist at all. It comes from China. That's why. Because the media plays such a central role in these times of crisis, the media blaming China for a pandemic that killed millions has had a drastic impact on people of Asian descent. And I found these impacts becoming apparent in my life as well. I had actually gone on vacation to Chongqing, China, about a month prior to the world going into lockdown. It was one of my last and happiest moments spending time with my distant family, and I thought absolutely nothing of my trip. However, as I came back home, I started noticing classmates, my closest friends, ignoring me. I had absolutely no reason why. I didn't know why, and also they never received any communication to me. And it was only recently that I found out the reason. Their parents had told them that because I came back home from China recently, I had COVID. But it wasn't just me that experienced things like this. In fact, 82% of all Asian Americans agree that we as a community have faced discrimination post-COVID-19. However, we the people need to recognize that we are the bosses of the media and government, and that we recognize our power and our ability to create micro and macro changes. Media outlets should screen and prohibit any stigmatizing language, such as Wuhan virus, Asian virus, or Chinese virus when referring to COVID in order to lessen negative racial bias against Asian Americans. Rather than playing the blame game with China, we must urge our leaders to improve diplomatic relationships. Why must so much hate and tension be involved when we all have the same common goal to eliminate the virus in general? International cooperation can cure our disease of racial animosity. Which brings me to my next point, something that we call implicit bias. Implicit bias brings hatreds towards Asians purely because they're Asian. For example, let's say I was a job hiring manager and I received 2 applications and I had implicit bias, one by the name of David Stevenson and another by the name of Ling Ling. Who do you think I would choose? And who do you think the majority of the public would choose? The name that sounds like a white man, or the name that sounds completely Asian? Exactly. In fact, a case in Canada found that people with Asian last names, origins from China, India, and even Pakistan were found to be 28% less likely to get called in to interview compared to their white competitors, despite having the same qualifications, if not even more. However, implicit bias does not mean that inclusivity is not one of our values. It means that we might not just be aware of how this implicit bias can impact our actions and decisions. And so I want all of us to work on eliminating and understanding this implicit bias. Now you might be wondering, is this girl crazy? How in the world can I do that? Well, let me share with you a personal story and a journey that you all can partake in as well. I actually had an implicit bias against my own people too, formed through the fear of not fitting in with my classmates or all the things that I saw on social media. I stopped bringing my ethnic dishes to events, never ever dared to speak my language in public, and did anything I could to appear as least Asian as I could be. However, after I realized that bonds with people like my grandparents were breaking, my conversations became limited, and I myself was unhappy. As I sat in silence and fear, I was more so frustrated. I couldn't take in this hate any longer. And so I did this. I started volunteering to help clean up Chinatown and support small AAPI organizations. I explored my culture through discovering new restaurants, reading newspapers from Asian markets, and most importantly, bonding with my community through them. I have learned so many things that I've found to love, and this not only empowered me, but the people alongside me. Now, you don't have to do this through volunteering. There are 1,000 different ways that you can do this compared to mine, but it all starts with having an open mind and breaking down pre-established barriers to let new kinds of people in. Me telling you this isn't a how-to guide, as everyone has their own story and journey to tell. But if I can use this platform here today to notify you of how I escaped that mentality, I strive to inspire you all as well. Healing from my bias has shown me how truly often overlooked Asian discrimination is, and not just us, but the communities of many others as well. And therefore, I urge you, by understanding and by mitigating our ability to be swayed by the media and understanding and eliminating our own implicit biases, let's work towards larger systematic changes in society. Take the time to understand people. Share and surround others with empathy. Don't let pre-existing thoughts ruin your images of entire communities, and instead, be open towards redirection. Be open towards letting them in. Cultivate Asian pride so that Chinese New Year is a holiday that we remember with loving memories only. Thank you. 谢谢。